You told us a lot about Fishertown and what it was like living there. And you used to work at Cordz-Fisher and Birch Tree. Could you tell us the difference between the Birch Tree and the Fishertown mills?
Oh, yes. Well, there's quite a lot of difference. What, you want me to tell?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, we left the farm in 1897. Father sold out, and we went to Birch Tree. We landed in Birch Tree in 97. Well, it wasn't like the rest of the mill towns all up and down this Skirt River branch, because the towns were separated, although they were together. But the mill people, most of them, all had their own homes on what they call over in Stringtown. Well, the mill wasn't as large. They cut about around 75,000 feet a day of lumber, while the rest of the mills, now the Ozark mill, they cut about 125,000, and then the old Missouri Lumber and Mining Company, they cut close to 200,000 feet a day. Well, the difference was in Birch Tree and Fishertown now, in the towns, there's worlds of difference. It was that Birch Tree, there's parts of it was pretty rough. They had a saloon there at that time, and there's quite a lot of drinking. Those fellas had come in from the camp, you know, come in on the logging trains. Of course, that saloon was about the first place they'd land. Oh, they had a few shooting scrapes, and no one ever got killed, I know of. But they'd gamble and drink, and I've seen the sidewalk they were board sidewalk. The front street sidewalk there for about a block and a half there's some places where it was 8 feet from the ground. And I've seen those fellas come in from the camp, and they lay around that saloon door, you know, all the time they had in town. And I've seen them so thick there that the women had come down to shop. Well, they'd have to go out in the street and go down the street. They couldn't go to the sidewalk. Well, now that is the kind of a town that was. While you take Fishertown, it was a one-man town. They owned everything in the way of businesses and everything inside. And in fact, my wife and I were the only ones in the 50-year history of the Missouri Lumber and Mining Company where they'd ever let a business in. But they had a small business a small building right close to the store. And at that time, I was in charge of the boiler room, or the power plant, at the hub mill. That is in World War I, during World War I. I fired and took care of the engine at the hub mill all through World War I. Well, when we got through with that, of course, like always, was always hunting something to dabble in. Well, I went to the boss, or to the general manager. I said, "What's the matter?" And my wife and I putting in the lunchroom in that little empty building. He studied a little while, and he said, "Well, we've never had anybody in the 50 years that we've been in business, except our own company." He said, "That would make a nice place for the boys to loaf for the night." Well, I put it in. And I put in at that time, the old the old record players, you know, that you wound up with a spring, they was in their real bloom. Well, I put those in. Of course, I didn't keep a big stock of them, just a table model and then some of the larger models. And they was right about being a good place. Boys, I hardly ever got to bed before 10 o'clock. They'd come down and they'd eat and drink. I bought a popcorn popper and a peanut roaster. Great big outfit. And they'd sit around there and I never did say a word to them about throwing their hulls on the floor because they was easy cleaned up. And at that time, there wasn't any law against the old one-armed bandits. Well, I put one of those in. It didn't pay money. It paid a slot, or a slug, about like a nickel. Well, just the size of a nickel, but it's made out of brass. Well, it was good for anything that wasn't arrested. I wouldn't even cash them. And you talk about a bunch of lumberjacks. They'd get around that thing. You talk about having fun. They'd have it. It paid all the way from 2 up to 20. They'd get some fella'd have to hit the jackpot while the roof was about to come off. Well, I stayed there then and in that restaurant until the Missouri Lumber and Mining Company sold out. Well, I got that wrong because I was at Fishertown at that time. But when they sold out, when Fishertown sold out, why that's when I came to Winona and took that building over there, that photo gallery that's called then. And I stayed there. I went over there in 1910. That's when the mill sold out. I stayed there until 1913.
What happened to the people in the area when the mill sawed out?
Well, they just left. Now, you said you had, I don't know whether it's you or him, said you had one of the histories of Winona, you know, or Winona then and now.
Right.
Well, there's so many of those pictures in there, all those mill pictures and pertaining to the mill and groups and everything I did myself. But what I started to tell you, when the mill sold out, there was 5 families. They got a railroad coach, and they all went in together, and they moved. There's a picture in there. I took the day they left. There were a lot of them standing along outside of the coach. Well, they went to Tacoma, Washington, to the mills there. Well, they just scattered out. You know, there's a lot of people that's still living right there on. They sold all their land, and there's still people living around over there yet.
Could you tell me a few stories about Mr. Hahn?
Well, yeah, he was a very devout Christian, and boy, they didn't tell you, there wasn't anything much went on around there that he didn't find it out if it wasn't right. About the biggest thing that anybody could have against Mr. Hahn, he is a very close friend of mine, was, I don't know, they'd get, well, say the school would want to do a certain thing, and he isn't hardly in favor of it, why, if he'd found out some of the men that voted against it, why, it's just too bad. Now, he is just that strict. If it was for the good of the community, you see, they